What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button and let me know what you think of today's very interesting discussion in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or you're living under a rock and seeing this video for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another Sit Down video. Also, summer is here. Make sure you go check out our signature Sit Down cigar, available now from Pravada Cigar Club. The link to buy is in the pinned comment of this video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into another very interesting organized crime topic. And in the early 2000s, the Bonanno crime family was rife with informants. For a family that didn't have any up until then, it was a shock to many. One of the forgotten informants that the Bonanno crime family had was this guy, a person that was described to me as a hothead. The story of Nicholas Pisciotti next on the Sit Down. Nicholas Pisciotti was born in October of 1969 in New York City. He would come up on Spring Street in Lower Manhattan, not far from Little Italy. Now, Pisciotti's family was from southern Italy in Basilicata, which is in southern Italy, not far from Calabria. Now, he did have the mafia in his roots, did Pisciotti. His uncle was longtime Bonanno captain Charles Little Charlie Massino, and he would use his connections to Massino later on when he would become affiliated with the mob. Now, Pisciotti would say that by essentially his teens, he began running the streets of Lower Manhattan, which, again, as I said, was just a stone's throw away from Little Italy. He would say that he really did whatever he had to do to make money, including doing things like selling fireworks, which is quite a mundane thing. But he would also say, Pisciotti, that he would also get involved with packaging dope. And by 1986, when he was barely 17, Pisciotti would say, quote, that he got directly involved with narcotics. First marijuana, then cocaine. And the marijuana was very small, like dime bags. Coke, I used to sell like half grams and grams. H, I only sold twice, a pound and a half each time. So again, by his late teens, Pisciotti was involved in the streets. Drugs were a big business around that time. And for a young kid, you could make good money doing that. And coupling that with some of the other things that Pisciotti was doing, he would make a decent amount of money. Now, Pisciotti would first be on record with the Lucchese crime family with a person called Johnny Brody Sorrentino. Now, Sorrentino is related due to the fact that he married longtime Lucchese member and huge drug dealer Charles Charlie Beck Di Palermo. Now, Di Palermo is the brother of the famed Joe Beck Di Palermo. Now, these guys were some of the biggest pushers of dope in the mafia. It's that simple. And the thing about the Lucchese crime family is when it really comes outside of the Bonanno family, when it comes to drugs, the Lucchese's were huge in that racket, really, whether it's the Di Palermo brothers, whether it's the group up on Pleasant Avenue, Carmine Mr. Gribbs Tremonti, Big John Armento. These guys were pushing a lot of dope. It's that simple. So Pisciotti's on record with the Prince Street crew down in Manhattan, which Lucchese's have always had a Manhattan crew. Now, he would quickly start making money, Pisciotti, and by his 18th birthday, he, like I said, was on record and were doing things the way he wanted. Now, in 1990, however, Pisciotti would be sent to prison. He would be hit with state drug charges and end up serving about 4 years. He would come home at the end of 1994. And as evident and as normal with criminals, they go right back to the streets. Pisciotti would say that he started getting involved with shylocking and also had a sports betting operation he was running, as well as operating in legit businesses. Now, I did say at the beginning of this video, I asked one person that knew Pisciotti about him. What was his demeanor? And the first thing I had heard about Pisciotti is he was a major hothead. and he had what was called a Napoleon complex, a short fuse kind of individual. And we'll see that down the road, Pisciotti's behavior, his quick, short fuse was really a detriment to him. Now, once he got out of prison and began operating in legit business, he would say that he had gotten into an issue with some person in the Lucchese crime family, which had to be squashed by his uncle, little Charlie Massino, who again was a skipper with the Bonanno family. He would eventually, Pisciotti, be moved to the Bonannos and put under control of Frankie Coppa. Now, Frankie Coppa was a big-time capo in that family. He operated out of Williamsburg, Brooklyn, in the area of Kent and Broadway, not far from Peter Luger's steakhouse, and just essentially over the Williamsburg Bridge from Lower Manhattan. So it wasn't far from Pisciotti's stomping grounds. Now, Frank Coppa would down the road, and really had always been very close to the boss of the family, Joseph Big Joey Massino, and Coppa was a trusted adversary. His crew would include Anthony Fiorino and Richard Cantarella. Now, also in this crew, under the auspice of Frankie Coppa, was Peter Lavaglio, who we had on the show a couple of months ago, and that interview can be seen here. So Coppa had a nice crew of guys. They were making money, and now for Coppa, he had a young kid under his auspice, and Pisciotti took right to that. He began handling collections of loan sharking and other debts for Frankie Coppa. Now, Pisciotti, by 1997, was engaged in legit business. He was operating both illegal and legal rackets, and he worked out of a social club on Spring Street in Manhattan. Pisciotti also had a bar on the Lower East Side called Banditos. And this is where, for Pisciotti, he would deal with his first real issue in his life. And again, he is an associate of the mob. I think on the surface, he is looking to become made at one point. And in September of 1997, Pisciotti and one of his associates, a person called Michael Di Maria, are at Banditos, and they would have some sort of issue with this guy, a person called Richard Guiga. Now, Guiga is in the bar. He's having an issue with someone in the bar. He becomes unruly, and he's thrown out of the bar. And this is where the issue happens for Mr. Guiga. Ultimately, both Pisciotti and Di Maria whack Mr. Guiga. Now, Guiga was a problem for a lot of people. It wasn't just these guys. Supposedly, Guiga had a major issue with other families as well. It had become clear that Guiga being killed, it was only a matter of time. He had major issues with not only these guys, but he also had an issue with Georgie Nexapola and the Lucchese crew. I guess at one point, Guiga was told to stay away from a woman that he had dated at one point, and she was dating Georgie Neck. He became an issue. One person would say about Guiga, he was a violent, vicious coke user, the most obnoxious scum who has ever walked the streets. He was universally hated. His own father disowned him. He was truly a guy that only a mother could love. When he disappeared and word got out that he was gone, everybody but her was a suspect. Now, it was said about Guiga that up to 20 different people had wanted at one point to kill Richard Guiga. So again, Guiga was a problem for a lot of people. He really just ran into the wrong situation, and someone finally touched him. And that's exactly what happened. And this was chalked up as something that had to be done. And for Pisciotti, this would essentially make him a made member of the mafia. In December of 1997, after being proposed by his skipper, Frank Coppa, Nicholas Pisciotti became a made member of the mafia. And the ceremony was held at a home in Long Island. Now, also made that night alongside Pisciotti was a person called Fat Richard Ricciardi. And Pisciotti would say, quote, "We sat around a table. Joey Massino explained the rules of the family, how he wanted people to conduct themselves in the family, and he told us we were supposed to act, how we were supposed to act, and we spoke in Italian, said some things. At the end of the day, we shook hands, kissed each other, and that was it." He would also say that during the ceremony, Massino was very surveillance conscious. He was worried in case anybody came in that didn't want to get caught with a gun. So no gun was there. There was nothing on the table. It was really just a simple ceremony, and that was that. Now, the real money starts coming for Pisciotti right after that. And what does Pisciotti really do well at this point? Really, since he was a kid, he sold dope. And that's exactly what Pisciotti started doing. In and around 2000, Pisciotti starts engaging in selling large amounts of weed. He would work directly with Vinny Gorgeous Basciano and Bruno Indelicato to sell large amounts of the green. Now, through connects in Canada, Mr. Pisciotti would bring approximately 250-pound shipments of weed per month. He would get the weed for about $2,300 a pound and then break it down and sell it around Brooklyn, Manhattan, and other areas. Now, in a 3-year period between 2001 and 2004, Pisciotti and his cronies moved approximately 6,000 pounds of ganja, worth approximately $18 million. So these guys were making a lot of money. Things were good for Pisciotti. He was married. He had children. He lived in a nice home in New Jersey. And again, he was taking a lot of his illegal money and putting it into legit things like nightclubs and gyms and things like that. Pisciotti was a young member of the Bonanno Crime Family, but as we know, things really start to turn for the Bonannos in and around 2002. A lot of people in the family become guests of the government. And in 2002, Frank Copa is arrested. He ultimately starts the domino effect and flips. Now, at the time, his acting captain, a person called Anthony Fiorina, would go to jail. This would then take most of the people that were in Copa's crew and divvy them around the Bonanno family. And this is where, instead of going to Frank Copa, Mr. Pisciotti is put under the control of Vinny Gorgeous Basciano. Now, at the time, Vinny Gorgeous gets arrested as well, and Dominic Sicali becomes the captain of that crew. Pisciotti, Nicholas Pisciotti, is named acting captain. So, Pisciotti's making his way up because at this point, a lot of people in the Bonanno crime family are getting hemmed up. By this point, even Joey Massino had been arrested. Now, between 2005 and 2007, Nicholas Pisciotti has several issues that he deals with. One of them involves a person called Ace Aiello, who's on the street and under the control of the Sicali crew. Him and Pisciotti get into a club fight with some guy in a nightclub. Things are going crazy. And another thing that Pisciotti has to deal with is at one point he is involved, let's just say, in the wrong thing. He's dealing with certain guys in the family, and they're at a place in Manhattan, a restaurant called Odessa, not far from Umberto's Clam House. And Pisciotti, according to himself, in 2005, there's an altercation between a guy, Joe Caruso, a guy, Robert Iniello, and Hector Pagan, who we had on the show a few months ago. According to Pisciotti, he would say about this, "I wasn't even there at first, but when I got to Odessa, Joey Caruso came over and I had an argument with me about something. He came over Hector and Hector smacked him. He got nervous. He ran to the back of the bar, Joey. I got mad at Hector for smacking him. I paid the check and we left. I got about a block and a half away, and Joey Caruso came out with 2 guys and a couple of bouncers and called me over and surrounded me. This was after Pagan did what he did. Now, Pisciotti would say we argued for a couple of minutes, then he sucker punched me. I hit him back and he got hurt. Now, in terms of who he hit, was a guy, Joey Caruso, and a person called Robert Ainiello. Now, Ainiello was the nephew of legendary Genovese captain Matty the Horse Ainiello. Now, again, the temper of Pisciotti catches up to him. However, I feel like in this situation, according to him, he was in the right. He was sucker punched on alongside one of his friends, a person called Louis Ventafrida. They did what they had to do. The problem is they beat up a guy that was very connected to a very powerful guy. And at this point, in 2005, Matty the Horse Ainiello is essentially the acting boss of the Genovese crime family. This was a big problem. Pisciotti was a made guy. He was an acting captain, but, captains don't behave like this. And all of this was because of Hector Pagan. Pagan, he was a hothead as well, as we know. Now, Pisciotti starts to recognize, though, that at this point, people in his own family don't like him and or side with him. One of the people on the street that's running the family on a day-to-day basis due to the fact that everyone is in jail is a person called Nicholas Nicky Mouth Santora. They have a sit-down over this beef with Ainiello, and Nicky Mouth Santora does not side with Pisciotti. The feds then make a run at Pisciotti and say essentially that there is a kill order on you and they're going to get rid of you. Now, down the road, the FBI also tries to get Pisciotti to flip. He doesn't do it. Down the road, though, for Pisciotti, he would have to face the government as well, because in February of 2007, Nicholas Pisciotti is indicted by the Eastern District in New York for selling dope. He's placed in the MDC. Now, by the end of February 2007, under a month later, Pisciotti decides that he will flip. In May of 2007, he would plead guilty and was released and sent into WITSEC. At this point in 2007, Nicholas Pisciotti would become the 13th made member of the Bonanno crime family in 5 years to flip. Think about that. Up until 2002, the Bonanno crime family had no informants. They were the class of the five families. No one flipped. And within 5 years, over a dozen people flip. Pretty crazy, including the boss of the family. Now, Pisciotti would eventually testify against members of the Bonanno crime family, including Vinny Gorgeous, Basciano, and Bruno Indelicato. Now, his testimony did not directly convict Basciano and Indelicato. However, it would help. As we know, Vinny Gorgeous is serving life. In fact, he's serving 2 life sentences. Bruno Indelicato got 20 years, did a long time in prison. Ace Aiello, he was hit pretty hard. So, Pisciotti was a decent witness in the end. Today, Nicholas Pisciotti is currently said to be living in Florida and is in his mid-50s. Now, I will say, if Nicholas Pisciotti sees this and would like to speak to me, you can reach out to me. I'd love to speak to you. Pisciotti, a forgotten guy, but a guy who, took the tact of any other young mobster, right? Puts his work in on the street, impresses the right people, comes into a glorious time in the mob, at least for the Bonanno family in the 90s. It's a functioning machine, one of the stronger families under Joey Massino. It makes a lot of money, lives the dream, becomes made, takes people out, does what he has to do. But I think for him in the end, he believed that the Bonanno crime family didn't have his back. And Pisciotti would approach at one point Nicky Mouth Santora in prison and kind of try to ask him what's going on, to which Santora would say, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not going to kill you, but that's the mafia for you. Now, Pisciotti's wife at one point would give an interview to the New York Post, and she would talk about, the fact that during her time married to Mr. Pisciotti, she had no idea he was in the mafia. Now, whether or not we believe that, who knows? Nicholas Pisciotti, another interesting story in the world of the mob. and a guy that we really forget about when it comes to Bonanno informants due to the fact that there just was so many. By the way, if you like this video, please, before you leave, hit that like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, hit that super thanks icon next to the like button. We'll see you next week here on the Sit Down.